Okay, so thank you so much for being here. And we're going to go ahead and get started. There'll probably be some people trickling in, but that's okay. Okay, so welcome. Welcome to How to Build a Valuable Photography Collection. Simple strategies for experienced collectors and those just getting started. So sometimes I see collectors behaving a little like this. It's like they're the distracted boyfriend. Next to them, they have the photographs on their wish list that they've been thinking about for a while, and then they go to an art fair and suddenly the photograph they've never considered before has all their attention. You may have felt like this at some point. But my approach is the opposite of the distracted boyfriend. My approach is thoughtful, personal, strategic. I don't believe in collecting based on trends. I don't believe in rushing decisions. I believe in coherence. I believe in intelligent, informed selection. And I believe that the most valuable collections are the ones with clarity of intent and emotional resonance. So today I'm going to talk about the three questions to ask before you buy. And through these three questions, here is what you will learn today. The most important foundation for buying a photograph that is totally right for you. We're going to do an exercise to apply that foundation so that what you collect is not only valuable, but deeply meaningful as well. And we're going to talk about the bigger picture so you can see how the foundational elements are essential in order to build a valuable collection. So, a few logistics for today. I encourage you to open and use the chat function. And so you know, Camilla, my most valued team member, she's here and she's being active in the chat. So if you need something while I'm talking, she's there and she can help you. I'll be answering questions about halfway through and then again at the end. And also, I find that my clients often ask me for additional resources. So I'll be sharing a little bit later about how you can work with me. And also, there will be an exercise. And for that, you will need a piece of paper and something to write with. So, okay, I'm gonna ask you a question and I'd like for you to answer in the chat. So if you can, open the chat and just type the first thing that comes to your mind. Okay, so why is this topic important to you? Oops. I am going to, oh, here it is. Nope. All right. Let me just stop the share. Oh, great. Hi, Camille. Um, if you want to answer in the chat, that would be great, but I think that it helps. And Camilla, can you tell me when I go back on screen, let me see. Are you also seeing me up in there in the corner
Yes.
there? Yes, yes. Okay, great. Excellent. Great. Okay. So before we dive in, I want to give you a little context about who I am and where my approach comes from. So in photography, there's kind of a lineage. It's knowledge that's passed down directly from one generation to another. And mine traces back to Beaumont Newhall. He was the first curator of photography at the Museum of Modern Art. He was the longtime head of the George Eastman House, and he's the author of The History of Photography, which, if you ever took a history of photography class, it most likely was the textbook. So Newhall mentored my professor, Alan Klotz. And in fact, Alan took over Newhall's classes in Rochester. And Alan later was my professor when I was in graduate school at Pratt Institute. He was also a photo dealer, and he hired me to work with him, which I did for over a decade. And that was really like 12 years of graduate school, but in the real marketplace. So, in addition to researching the ever evolving inventory of the business, we also spent long days at Sotheby's, Christie's, Phillips, examining thousands of photographs at every auction preview. And that's where I learned to date prints by eye, how to recognize different printing processes, how to evaluate condition, signatures, mounts, provenance, all the details that determine value. And Alan used to say, asking the right questions is how you get the right answers. And that's what connoisseurship is about. You won't learn about it in a book. It comes from years of looking, comparing, and understanding how photographs were made and circulated. So today, I carry that lineage forward. Just as Newhall taught Alan and Alan taught me, I see it as my job to pass that knowledge on to collectors. And people are talking more and more about the great wealth transfer that's happening right now, but we're also facing a great knowledge loss. And my goal is to make sure that collectors have access to that expertise so that you can collect with clarity, avoid costly mistakes, and build something of lasting value. And over the years, I've seen hundreds of collections, and some of them were extraordinary, and others less so. And it struck me that many collectors don't understand what it means to really build a cohesive collection, as opposed to simply acquiring photographs. So the idea of this talk was born from that realization. A few years ago, I visited a collector who had spent more than 20 years buying photographs. Many of them were beautiful, most of them were expensive. But as I walked through his collection, I found myself genuinely upset on his behalf. The investment he had made could have built really something remarkable, a collection that reflected his vision, carried his name, and secured his legacy. It could have become a museum collection or a traveling exhibition or even a book that told a powerful story. Instead, he owned a group of individual photographs, which they were nice, but it was disconnected. And really the only thing he could do was just resell them one by one. And that experience changed how I think about collecting because amazing collections, the ones that end up in museums or are preserved by families, they are cohesive. They have a clear framework and they express a point of view. The images connect to tell a story or communicate an idea, and the sum of the whole becomes greater than the sum of the parts. And as always, there's a high discernment and awareness of quality that only comes from deep looking. So that's really what today is about, learning how to think like a collector who is building something lasting. Because when you have the right questions and the right framework, every decision you make adds up to something extraordinary. So, from my experience, the challenges that collectors face in building a valuable photography collection can be solved by adhering to a few guiding principles that come about from asking three key questions. Number one, does the image resonate with one of my core values? This is where the theme of your collection comes from. Number two, how does this image fit in with what I already have or envision for my collection? And the third question is, have I done my due diligence to ensure the quality of the object and its market value? Okay, so what I know for sure is that anyone can build a valuable collection with confidence, knowing when a photograph is right for you and at the right price. You must have a clear understanding of what you're collecting is being motivated by in order to make confident decisions. It needs to be a pretty clear framework. Otherwise, you can get easily confused by all the choices that are presented to you.
Good afternoon.
Yes, whatever it is. It depends on the weather, what time it is, right?
Walking at a weird time. I always walk in the morning. So
All
it's like
right.
it's the morning.
I'm not sure how I mute this on here. Okay, there it goes. Okay. Let me back up. It needs to be in a pretty clear framework. Otherwise, you can get easily confused by all the choices that are presented to you, just like the distracted boyfriend. And finding the perfect photograph for your collection can be easy when you have a clear framework and a strategy around your collecting. Okay, so let's talk about the first question. Does the image resonate with one of my core values? Your core values are the things or ideas that are most important to you. So really the first step is to go inward. You've probably heard the old adage, buy what you love, when somebody asks, what should I collect? But the problem with that is there's a lot to love. And remember that a collection is a reflection of the collector. So here are just some examples I wanted to lay out so you can see some examples. We have things like beauty, adventure, family, creativity, which I know this is being very simplistic, but it's kind of the point. What I'm really inviting you to do is to interrogate your desires and your reasons and to drill down to single words that encapsulate what it is that resonates with you when you think about collecting. So here's an example of how things translate when core values are applied to collecting. One of my clients bought this really great John Baldessari, The Ocean with the Palm Tree. She was so excited when she bought it, and she got it framed and hung on her wall, and she called me up and she told me how much she loved having this beautiful object that she was able to look at every day. And then she said, I love the ocean so much. I feel like when I'm there, I'm my most joyful, truest self. This image really feeds me. So now here's the thing. The collector, she lives in the desert. The ocean is nowhere near. So this photograph that she sees and enjoys every day is really like acting as a touchstone for her. It's there and it's feeding her. It's feeding her innermost self. And this is how, when you buy a photograph and hang it on a wall, it becomes an investment in your everyday life. It pays dividends every time it makes you think. So when someone looks at your collection, they should feel like they know more about who you are, because collecting is a reflection of the collector. So when you have your core values at the forefront, your collection will naturally be more in alignment with who you are and what is in your heart. It's a more fulfilling experience. And when that happens, there's a sense of empowerment when making choices about what to buy and also what not to buy. So here's another example. I have a client who collects photographs of Coney Island. The reason he collects photographs of Coney Island is because that is where he met his wife. So in a way, Their collection is a tribute to their relationship, and all over the house are photographs that remind them of where their relationship started, which I think is pretty cool and creative. Okay, so what I would like for you to do to make this the interactive part is I'd like for you to take a piece of paper and on the left-hand side, write down 3 or 4 of your core values. Think about your inner compass, the things that really drive you. And while you're doing that, I'm going to just quickly go through a few more examples to illustrate more of what I'm talking about. Okay, so Aaron Siskind, what comes up for me with this is freedom, adventure, fun. Bruce Davidson, The March in Selma, so civil rights, freedom, activism, democracy. Ansel Adams, nature, beauty, conservation. Adams was a big conservationist. And also excellence. I'm going to say because Adams is known for his excellent craftsmanship in the darkroom, making his prints. So core values can extend into print quality and print type. William Wegman, humor, fun, maybe even irony. And the last one, Man Ray, Glass Tears. So to surrealists like Man Ray, the eye was an important symbol of inner vision. This concept was central to their philosophy. Okay, great. So that covers the first question. Now let's look at the second, which is how does the photograph fit in with what I already have or envision for my collection? Okay, so hopefully you have your core values written down on the left side of the piece of paper. What I would like for you to do now is on the right side, write down however many, 6 or so photographs that you either own or want to own, and just a description either by the photographer's name or the title, something. And I'm going to give you a minute to do that. Okay, so here's an example of what that might look like. These are some of my core values and a few photographs that I have. Now, on your piece of paper, draw a line from between a photograph and a resonating core value. Okay, so what did you discover? Uh, you can come on screen, or if you want to answer in the chat. And hi, Ben. Yes, I'm gonna about to get into spotting value, so that is great. Next section. So, okay, great. Okay, I am going to continue sharing. All right, great. All right, great. So I'm going to show you a simple example of how a simple idea can develop into a great collection. So the idea is portraits coupled with experimentation. And I'm going to go through these about 5 or 6 photographs without comment, because what I would like for you to do is really pay attention to how the images complement one another. Okay, so I had to include the cat. Uh, these photographs are from Elton John's collection. And I deliberately chose Elton John as an example because everyone knows who he is and everyone has heard his music. So it's easy to see how experimentation would be one of his core values. I mean, it's literally baked into his identity. Okay, great. So we've covered two of the questions. So let's move on to the third. Have I done my due diligence to ensure the quality? So the process of ensuring quality is often referred to as connoisseurship. It's the specific knowledge about all of the factors that go into determining the value and importance of a photograph. And the truth is that connoisseurship, it's the kind of expert knowledge that takes decades to acquire. So first, let's talk about the three overarching factors that determine quality and value. And this comes up when you're considering a photograph to buy and you're asking yourself, is this a good investment? So I want to start with a story that one of my longtime clients tells me every time I see him. I've heard this story. It's got to be at least 10 or 12 times. So back in the early 1990s, he had the chance to buy a signed print of Robert Frank's Trolley, New Orleans for $7,000. At the time, most Frank photographs were selling around 5,000. So he hesitated. The gallery told him it was a beautiful print in excellent condition, but he refused to go above what he thought was a fair price. And so he walked away. Fast forward, and the most recent auction record for a similar print, over $400,000. So this isn't just a story about a missed opportunity. It's a reminder that without the right framework, even experienced collectors can let major values slip through their hands. So how do you avoid missing opportunities like this? There are three overarching factors that determine the value of a photograph. I think of them as three tracks of history. You have the history of the photographer, the history of the image, and the history of the print itself. So let's go through these one by one. So first off, where the artist fits within the history of photography and how they contributed to pushing the medium forward. Were they part of an important movement like the forefront of modernism, a member of the photo secession, part of new topographics? What did they do to influence people's perception and understanding of the world with their photographs? So take Edward Weston, for example. Weston fundamentally redefined what was considered worthy of a photograph. By training his lens on a cabbage leaf, a shell, or a pepper, he showed that form and light alone could carry artistic weight. And that shift is why Weston sits at the very center of the market even today. His work marks a dividing line in the history of photography. There's what came before him and what came after. And this is because Weston championed the idea of pure photography, which was a new idea at the time, to make unmanipulated, objective representation of reality that highlighted the medium's unique qualities. He was a leading member and public face of Group F64, which was a collective of San Francisco photographers who advocated for straight photography through sharp details, small apertures like F64. His focus on the essence of the subjects combined with his elegant formalist approach helped establish the West Coast School of Modernism and cement photography's legitimacy as a fine art. So when you look at today's market, that legacy is baked directly into the value of his prints. Okay, number 2, where the image fits within the arc of the photographer's career and within the particular body of work. So, is the image one of their most iconic photographs? Is it a breakthrough moment when they were still forming their ideas, or is it a lesser known work? So Dorothea Lange's White Angel Breadline is a perfect example of how one image can crystallize an artist's career. It was the first documentary photograph she ever made when she stepped outside the safety of her portrait studio during the Great Depression. And in that moment, she shifted from photographing society's comfortable classes to bearing witness to America's most vulnerable. And that single photograph of a man with his head bowed, framed against a line of unemployed men all waiting for a meal, became emblematic of the era and defined her trajectory. It wasn't just another Depression image, it was the picture that launched her career as one of America's great documentary photographers. And collectors view it as a touchstone and a breakthrough work that captured both the human dignity and the social struggle of the 1930s. And it foreshadowed the sensitivity that would later come to define Lange's migrant mother and her other Farm Security Administration images. So it marked a turning point when an established portrait photographer found her life's purpose and redefined what was possible. So number 3 is the history of the photographic object itself. When was it printed? For what purpose? Who has owned it? What is its condition today? These questions can mean the difference between a 5-figure photograph and a 6-figure one. Condition and provenance, they're not small details, they're actual market drivers. And together, these 3 tracks, the photographer, the image, and the object, are what determine the true value of a photograph. And this process of weighing all 3 is called connoisseurship. And it's a framework that lets you recognize historical significance, market patterns, and long-term value. It's the kind of expertise that does take a long time to acquire, but collectors who understand these factors or who work with an expert who does, don't just build beautiful collections, they make informed, strategic investments that stand the test of time. Okay, so let's just circle back for a minute to that Robert Frank that got away. If the collector had paused just for a moment and run that print through this framework, here's what he would have seen. First, the photographer. Robert Frank is one of the most important photographers of the 20th century. His series, The Americans, changed the language of photography. Frank sits at the center of the field. And artists who's at the center tend to hold and grow value over time. And second, the image, Trolley, New Orleans. It was the cover image of the book, The Americans, the photograph chosen to introduce the entire body of work to the world. It's a signature picture from the most defining project of his career. And third, the print itself. The print he was offered was signed in beautiful condition. So when you look at all 3 together, the photographer, the image, and the object, the value becomes clear. Okay, so hopefully you're still with me because I still have more to talk about. Let's talk about the object. So when you're assessing the actual photograph, there are things that you need to check. Because photography is a multiple, there's a negative from which any number of prints could be made. However, unlike an etching or a lithograph, not all prints are the same. So this dichotomy is baked into the act of collecting photographs. So I'm going to run through the questions that go through my mind that I need to answer when I'm looking at a photograph. First off is the paper. What does the paper look like? What kind of print is it? Is it a silver, a platinum, a dye transfer? Is it a vintage print or a later print? Does the paper look like it's from the time period that the person selling it says it's from? Is it typical to how the artist printed their work? If it's atypical, is it atypical good or atypical bad? What are the various ways that prints of this image exist? Are there a lot of prints out there or very few? Is it on the right photo paper? Is it a single weight or double weight? Is there a texture to the surface, glossy or matte surface? Was it ferrotyped? What's the texture of the back of the print? And does it glow under blacklight? Next off is the signature. Is it signed? Is it signed in the right place? Is the signature authentic? Does the signature match the way the photographer was signing their prints at that time period that the print was made? If it's a later signature, does that matter? Is it stamped? What kind of stamp? Is the stamp significant? Does it mean something? Is the stamp typical to the time period? And if it's not stamped, is it supposed to be stamped? What other markings are on the print and what does it mean? Does it come from a portfolio? Does that mean that it should have an edition number? Is it supposed to be mounted? Is the mount the correct size? Because sometimes they get trimmed. Is it the original mount? And is the mount archival? Is there a border between the edge of the image and the edge of the paper? And is the border the way that it's supposed to be? How is the condition? Are there any creases, indentations, cracks in the emulsion, dichroic fog, foxing, discoloration? Given the habits and history of the photographer, how important is the condition really? And if there are condition issues, is it bothersome and can a conservator do anything about it? Provenance. What is a provenance? Why was the print made? Was it in an exhibition, printed in a magazine? Was it once part of an important collection? And does a provenance add value? So these are a bunch of things to look for. So now here is where things can get messy. In general, vintage prints are worth more than later prints, except for Ansel Adams. His early vintage work, which are these small, delicate parmelian prints, they're not worth nearly as much as his later grandiose prints, the ones that most people are familiar with. Another example, generally, condition is very important. Exceptions, vintage prints by Robert Frank, Weegee, and W. Gene Smith. Those guys, they were all slobs. And so if you turn down a vintage Robert Frank solely because of a few imperfections, you weren't understanding the bigger picture. So these are things to consider, but understand that there are many exceptions and they're not always intuitive. Okay, so before we start to wrap up, I want to share a quick story that has stayed with me all year. A longtime collector that I know here in Los Angeles lost his entire photography collection in the fires last January. There were dozens and dozens of remarkable works that were gone overnight. This is a before photo of his house, which I have because he happened to live in a house that was designed by Richard Neutra, a mid-century house and one of the only Neutra houses that he built on the west side. This is a before picture. And this is his house after the fire. So this image actually was in the New York Times as part of an article about the significant architectural losses from the fires. But the hardest part wasn't just the loss itself. It's because he couldn't make an insurance claim. Why? Because he had no digital documentation. Whatever he had, invoices on pieces of paper and the like, they were destroyed in the fire too. No condition reports, no image, no proof of purchase. He had spent years building something beautiful and valuable, but without records, it was as if it never existed. So that experience really reinforced something I've been saying to collectors for years. Your documentation is part of your legacy. It protects the value of what you've built. It supports your family, your heirs, and your estate. And it ensures that your collection can live on, whether through donation, sale, or exhibition. So because of this, I created a photography collection documentation template to help collectors like you organize, preserve, and protect what you've worked so hard to build. And as a thank you for showing up live here today, I'm going to give it to you for free. So Camilla, if you can, please share the link in the chat. And everyone, you can go ahead and copy the link, and it will take you to a Google Drive where you can download it and start using it right away. Okay, great. So what is next? You've just seen how great collections aren't built by accident. They're the result of clarity, connoisseurship, and intention. And I hope that you're feeling inspired right now and seeing possibilities for your own collection, because this is where collecting shifts from being something that you do to something that you build. And the truth is that most collectors never get a chance to sit down with someone who's been inside the market for nearly 3 decades, who can help them see their collection the way a curator, a historian, or a connoisseur would. You can take everything we've talked about today and start applying it for yourself. And I hope that you do. But there's another level available when you have an expert pair of eyes helping you define your collection's direction, identify its strongest works, and help with decisions that actually build value and meaning over time. And so that's where I come in. I offer something called a collector strategy session. It's a private 45-minute consultation, one-on-one with me, where we look closely at your collection and your goals. Whether you're actively acquiring, refining what you own, or thinking ahead about how your collection will live on, we'll create a clear strategic plan that fits your vision. You'll walk away with personalized insights based on your goals and your collection, expert recommendations for next steps, acquisitions, or divestments, and answers to your top questions about value, rarity, market trends, and legacy planning. You'll get a post-session action plan that's completely tailored to you, and plus some recommendations for longer-term strategies to help you meet your collecting goals. So you can think of it as borrowing my brain for an hour, the 28 years of experience, the thousands of photographs I've handled, and the deep knowledge of how museums, dealers, and markets think. Connoisseurship takes decades to acquire, and this is your shortcut. One conversation can save you from costly mistakes or open doors to opportunities you didn't even know existed. So collectors often tell me that a single insight from our session changed how they see every future purchase. So if what we talked about today resonated, if you want to collect with clarity and to build something lasting, I would love to help you do that. You can book directly through my website. Just click on the consulting button at the top menu bar on my website. And Camilla, can you also share the link in the chat so you can grab it there too? Spots are limited because I only take a few of these sessions per month. So if this speaks to you, I encourage you to reserve your session while the window is open, because ultimately, this isn't about owning more photographs. It's about shaping a body of work that reflects your eye, your values, and your legacy. It's about building something that endures. That's what I help my clients do. And I would be honored to help you do the same. So, with that, I'm going to stop sharing and come on screen for any questions that you may have. Oh, great. Thanks, Camilla. Okay. Any comment about contemporary archival pigment ink prints of contemporary work? Um, I am going to assume that you're talking about longevity in terms of if they will last. I think I think time will tell. I mean, I think that the inks have gotten a lot better than when they first came out in, I guess it was like the early 2000s. Um, but I think that they've been I have not heard of any issues. Let me just say that. Oh, but any aspect. You know, okay. I'm going to give my opinion. This is an opinion. Um, the thing about these archival pigment ink prints, they're not actual, they're prints made from a photographic negative, but they're not actually printed on a light sensitive piece of paper. So like to me, technically, they're not actually a photograph. They're not actually a photograph in terms of the fact that it's on a photographic piece of paper. And for me, I mean, the thing about this most applies to black and white gelatin silver prints, but it would also apply to color in a different way. But the thing about the usual black and white photographs that you see, referred to as gelatin silver prints. And the reason that is their name is it is actual silver particles in a layer of gelatin that is a piece of photographic paper. And the thing about having silver in the paper is that when the light hits it, when you have a photograph, you put it up on the wall or wherever it is, and the light hits it, there is a bit of a reflection from the silver coming back at you. As part of why that's some when people talk about, oh, that photograph, it just like it's so luminous, it's so almost like it glows or something. That's the silver in the paper. So for me, and this is my opinion, I feel like a lot of them the pigment prints, I mean, there's a little lack of life in the print, and that's my opinion. So, okay, I will thank you so much for your questions. I'll take them one at a time. People's taste priorities change over time. How does that jibe with the concept of a consistent collection? This is a great question. I love this question. I think that you would kind of want your collection to evolve over time and that it is natural. That's a natural evolution because I think the more you look and the more you learn, the more you grow, and that affects your taste and it affects what you buy. And I think I think that it's natural for it to do that, and I think that it's one of the exciting things about collecting, actually, because you can most collectors that I know actually have more than one collection, um, because of this very reason, you know, and sometimes the collection will go in a different direction. And I think what I have seen as their tastes change, I think it's a good idea to go and review your collection however often, once a year, every other year or something, and see what your own vision is revealing to you. Like it's almost like when you collect, there is a bit of a subconscious thing that's happening. Um, and maybe only when you get like 5 or 6 photographs that you realize that. Like that happened to me. Like I realized I'm really attracted to photographs of people suspended in air. That's part of why I had like that Siskin diver and I have a Winogrand of the cheerleaders like all up in the air at the same time. And it didn't occur to me that I was just seeing that as like an act of freedom, as like defying gravity. It wasn't until I had a few of them that I realized that. But then also I think collecting can be just such a great exercise of like understanding yourself and the world and how you see the world. So I also see people that when you review your collection, which I hope you do, then sometimes you can say, "Oh gosh, this piece I bought however long ago, it's just not hitting the same to me now. Let me sell it, and then I can use the proceeds to buy something that fits my vision now." I think that's a great thing for collectors to do, and I see it often. I see it often. Okay. Ben, does it add value to collect multiple images by the same artist, or is it better to have greater breadth? I think I think that's an individual choice. It depends on what the theme of the collection is. I I think it depends on what the theme of the collection is, and also sometimes people really do like to have have like looking at different artists, and sometimes somebody will have decide that, this this artist is my person. And it also depends on what your end goal is. Um, there's a collector here in LA who decided, I know I keep bringing up Robert Frank, but he decided he wanted to collect Robert Frank. This was a long time ago. So he decided that he wanted to try and see if he actually could buy every single photograph that was in the Americans book, which he did. He had the means to be able to do that. And then he took that and how I was saying before at the beginning, how it's like the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Um, he sold the entire thing complete to a museum, um, which is great. So he went all in on one artist because it aligned with his end goal. So Ben, I would say it depends on what your goal is. Um, and that will inform the direction that you go. So great. Um, Based on my opinion of pigment prints, should collectors avoid these in favor of silver-based images? I, I no, I think it depends on the I think it's a case by case basis, actually. I've seen some, and for me, like the paper that it's printed on becomes important to me. Like sometimes artists choose like a really like a textured paper because it really is almost it's like it's printed on like an artist drawing or watercolor paper. And sometimes the ones that artists choose will have a lot of texture on the paper, which for me, I find it distracting. Um, it depends. But like for example, this photograph behind me is a color pigment print, and it's a by Irving Penn. And because Irving Penn was so fastidious in printing his photographs, um, it's an excellent quality, and he's really into the details. But also, I don't think that you should avoid pigment prints, especially if you're into color. And part of the reason, and I've seen this over the years, is it's almost as if that that is what is available in the market these days. There was a big change. There's always a change in what the manufacturers of the paper and these processes for making photographic prints. That's part of it. Like part of it is that the artists have had to switch to digital because the things that people used to make the color prints, they just can't get the materials anymore. There's a lot of talk of one color process is dye transfer prints, and I remember it was a talked about a lot in an event, like the manufacturers just decided not to make the materials anymore. And a couple of people stockpiled it so that they can continue working that way, but it's like once it's gone, it's gone. So I hope that answers your questions. Okay. When a photographer dies, many times it becomes impossible to find that photographer's work. Faye Godwin and Lori Boulder-Dink are two examples. How do you find work by photographers uh, when they've disappeared from the marketplace? Um, I don't know if I have. How do you find their work when sometimes it becomes a research project, I have to do that sometimes, and when Google is not any help, I would try to reach out to institutions that might give you a lead about it, the Center for Photography in Tucson, or um, International Center of Photography, or if you have a relationship with a dealer or a museum curator or something. If you really cannot find it, there are Um, that's the best advice I have because it is unfortunate because sometimes even just like um I last year I was working with what a dealer called me up who's a more like painting and drawing, prints and drawings really is more what he did, but he had gotten a call um from a real estate agent because well his wife is a stages apartments and homes for when they are being sold. So, and because she's married to an art dealer, this real estate agent knew that he was an art dealer. So she calls him up and says, there's this house apartment in New York. Um, it was a artist and her husband. The artist died a few years ago, and now the husband just died. They did not have any children, and it was a in New York City, the apartment, and the whole thing needed to be cleaned out within 72 hours. She's like, the thing is that there is all of this artwork in the apartment, and unless you can come and take it, it's all going to get thrown out. And so, unfortunately, uh, sometimes that happens. But luckily, he was able to go and bring a couple of trucks because there was a lot of material. I visited him last year when I was in New York and looked through it and save all of this stuff. But yeah, sometimes things do disappear, which is unfortunate. So, um, okay. Any other questions for today? Anything that you want to share? I'm here for anything that you may want to talk about regarding collecting. I guess just one other thing that I will say about when a photographer dies, or if there is a group, sort of a loose organization that helps photographers um, with their archive when they're like thinking about what's going to happen when I die. The name is not is evading me at this point, but I have the information because some photographers, um, all photographers face this question, So if it's something that you're interested in, just email me later because I'll remember it and I have the contact information for it. Dennis, your guidelines similar to what an artist needs to do to focus their yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I kind of think like being a collector is a little, you do get to be kind of like an artist or an art curator, but you get to act like an artist too. So yeah, they are very similar, similar. So great. Wonderful. So, okay, great. Well, if that is everything. If you don't have any more questions, I just want to say thank you so much. I had a lot of fun doing this. I hadn't done this in a little while, so I really appreciate you showing up. Um, Thank you. Thanks, Dennis. I appreciate that. And I recorded the session. I will be sharing it on my YouTube channel if you want to watch it again or anyone who was not able to be here right now. Um, and I guess that's it. So great. Thank you so much. And I'll see you later. Okay. Bye.